Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we have a new series, but this one is only going to have 2 books in it. So the first book is called The Endgame, and it is by Cleary James. So the book starts off with Lisa and Mark. They're getting ready to go to a dinner with another couple. So she's kind of looking at herself in the mirror, and she feels like she is too skinny, as she kind of feels like her features are sunken in, her ribs are showing. But this is how Mark likes her body. So we can tell right off that he is a control freak, and he's probably going to be a little mean. He doesn't like the fact that she tells him he doesn't have to spend like money on her, on like new dresses. She's like, I already have so many. He'll get upset with her. And, he'll be like, oh, you come from a small town. You just don't understand. You need to get over that small way of thinking. When someone has money, to learn how to enjoy it. So you need to learn how to enjoy this. That's how he treats her. So they're going to a dinner with Isabelle and Grayson. So Isabelle is an artist. Grayson is an architect. And the home they're going to is actually Grayson's. So he tells her, don't be a country hick. He literally says this to her, and embarrass me. And she's like, okay, I won't. So Lisa can tell that Mark is a little too happy about this dinner, but she can't quite figure out why. So she chalks it up to maybe, just wanting to impress them because they are this like successful people. So then right before they're getting ready to head out the door, he tells her, just no matter what happens, just go with the flow. Just be cool. Right there with that statement, I went, oh gosh, this is about to be some mess. So while they're on their way to dinner, Mark makes the comment to her, I'm so glad to finally be able to take you out again. So we get a little bit of a backstory on their relationship. So this, for the record, this book takes place in London. Okay. Lisa met Mark while she was in college. And after her second year, he had convinced her to drop out because she didn't really have the talent. And they go even more in depth as we go along in the book. It'll give even more detail to how that whole situation happened. So she drops out. He takes her to Paris, wines and dines her, treats her great, but he starts to kind of subtly start insulting her. So he would make comments about other women's bodies in front of her. Then he got mean with it, and he would call her straight out fat. After she had gained a little weight, once he made her quit because she actually was his assistant as well for a short period of time. So then she went on this insane diet because he wants her to be the supermodel size of a size 0. So again, there's more to this story with that, and it's really screwed up, the whole thing. So they get to Grayson's house, and she immediately feels his intense stare. Grayson, like he's very taken with her, like immediately. So she also notices like how beautiful Isabelle is. So while they're at dinner, Grayson was asking her questions about her art, her childhood, where she vacationed. And every time she answered, it was met with Mark saying, oh, she's barely traveled. She's very, provincial. And just being mean to the girl. And when she was describing her time with her grandparents, she saw this angry look on Mark's face, because he hated stories about her past. Then, even when it came up to her speaking of how she used to paint, he was like, oh, she wasn't that good, and, it never went anywhere. Cutting the woman down at every opportunity that he could. It was just despicable. So, after this conversation, she notices Mark starts rubbing on Isabelle's arm. He starts kissing her neck, and they're like full on making out. And so Lisa's is like, she's like in a complete state of shock. And then Grayson goes to touch her and she like knocks his hand away. And then when she looks up at Mark, he's giving her like this warning look. Like, you better go through with this. So now it makes sense about what he said about just go with the flow and don't embarrass me. Want to do a partner swap. So then after dinner, Isabelle says, she has a surprise for dessert. And she asks Lisa, to come and help her. So Lisa goes in the kitchen with her. And surprise, Lisa's going to be the dessert. Lisa freaks out, but then thinks of how angry Mark is going to be. So she just complies, So after Isabelle tells her, get naked, get on the table, she does. And then Isabelle puts like whipped cream, strawberries, chocolate sauce all over her body. So then Isabelle calls in the guys and then they start like kissing all over her, eating everything off of her body. Grayson eats her pussy until she comes, and Mark is like kissing her mouth while he does it. So when they're done, Isabelle comes in and because she had left, and then she comes back in and she's like, hey, I got the hot tub already. So Grayson tells Lisa, I can't wait to be inside of you. So Lisa is so overwhelmed. She has this complete look of horror on her face. And Isabelle sees it. Mark doesn't see it because he's all on Isabelle kissing her, so he can't see. But Isabelle catches that look, and so she looks at Grayson. They had some type of eye contact, and she mouthed something, and it stopped. All of a sudden, Grayson completely changed. And it was like he knew, based on what Isabelle had mouthed to him, okay, this isn't going to work. So let me go back real quick. Before Mark leaves out, because Grayson was like, okay, well, we'll stay here, she can get cleaned up, right? So then Mark keeps telling Grayson, oh, yeah, you want to make sure you get her mouth. She's really good with her mouth. Now, again, this is supposed to be her whole boyfriend telling another man, hey, you want to get that head from her. It's phenomenal. It's worth it. Crazy when she's walked into something and she has no idea that this is what is going to happen. It's crazy. So Grayson takes her to the bathroom. He's like, here you go, get cleaned up. He's like, just meet me in the kitchen. And she was shocked because she thought he was gonna try and like come in there and fuck her, but Grayson's whole demeanor had changed. So they get back to the kitchen. She gets to the kitchen. He asks her, you want some tea? She says yes. And then he asks her, did you know what was going on? And she says, no, I didn't. And he says, how did you not know? And he was like, well, what did Mark tell you? And she said, oh, he just said we were going to dinner with some, new friends. And Grayson was furious. Because he's like, oh my gosh, I almost, did something horrible to you. I didn't know. And she's like, no, don't be upset. Don't be upset. He even asked her, he's like, is he abusive to you? Because he could tell based on the conversation that this was someone, he was abusive in some type of way. He didn't know if it was physical, but he could tell verbally and emotionally this guy was abusive. He could tell based on the conversation. And so we find out he may not be physically at this point, but he has been physical in the past. And then during sex, he's very rough with her. He likes to bite her, leave marks on her body, but she's not into that. See, these things are okay if the person is into it, but she's not into it, but she's terrified of him at this point. There's a level of fear that he has now instilled in her. And so she'll go along with things just to not cause a ruckus because there's like hell to pay if she doesn't. Super sad. Super sad. So Grayson takes her to the library. They can hear, like, while they were in the kitchen, they could hear Isabelle and Mark fucking, but it didn't bother her because she doesn't like Mark. He's fucking mean, you know? So it didn't bother her to hear it, but at the same time, she probably really doesn't want to hear it. So Grayson takes her to the library, and he has a game of chess, and she used to play a lot with her grandparents, and they actually he asks her different questions about her grandparents. Like, he genuinely wants to know about her. And so she's not used to this. This feels very foreign to her. And so she's talking about her grandparents, and we find out that's where she learned how to play chess. They played chess up until the day they died. The grandfather feels like the grandmother died just so she could be ahead and win. I said, I can't. But they passed like very quickly, like I think within either 5 weeks or 5 months of each other. So that was her family. Her parents died in a car accident, so that was all the family she had. So she's alone in the world, you know. So they have a great time talking about, you know, chess, her life, and she tells Grayson a little bit more about, like, you know, because he wants to hear about her art because he's a collector. So basically what happened was she was in art school, okay? She was the premier student. Mark is an art gallery owner, right? So when Mark comes in to schools, you know, of course, they're trying to find the next big thing. That's what Lisa was. So he started dating her, and then he started cutting her down and telling her, oh, no one bought it. You know, basically telling her she wasn't that great. So something right there is off. If you are the premier student, right? And this is an art gallery owner. This is someone, everyone knew who Mark was. He knows his art. And if he picked you, you were the best. So now all of a sudden, once he has you, now all of a sudden your artwork is trash. That alone to me should have kind of told her, okay, something's up. But she fell in love with Mark in the very beginning because he was very loving to her. He was very caring to her. I think he knew she didn't have anyone else in the world because she met him right after her grandparents had passed. So that's like the prime victim, you know, to isolate, to get them to do whatever it is you want them to do, to bend their will. And that's what he did. And now this is where she is today. She doesn't work. She stays home. She's completely, totally dependent on him, which is what he always wanted. That was always the ultimate goal. So they leave. Well, before they leave out, she's like, you know, we might need to kind of make it look like we did something. So she kind of ruffles her hair a little bit. He, you know, ruffles his shirt a little bit, you know, just to kind of make it look like they were doing something. Because, again, she's not trying to get in trouble if Mark comes out of that room and doesn't think she's had, you know, hasn't partaken in this exploration. They leave out of the library. They go meet up with Isabelle and Mark. And Grayson looks hurt and jealous as Mark grabbed Lisa. And Lisa felt guilty letting Mark touch her in front of Grayson. So they clearly connected. Doesn't always take you having sex to connect. And they clearly have connected. So they leave. They make plans. You know, they're going to do this soon or whatever. And they're like, okay, whatever. They leave. So after they leave, Isabelle and Grayson kind of have a discussion about the night. And then they talk about how Grayson, you know, didn't, like, Isabelle was trying to, when she found out they didn't have sex, because he was honest with Isabelle. And Isabelle was kind of like, well, you want me to take care of you? So they don't have, they're not together. They just pretty much, they like friends with benefits. They have sex when they want to. She has other lovers. He doesn't feel this undying love for her. She's just kind of there, and it's kind of that way for both of them. But he didn't want her. Like, he wanted Lisa. Like, the very thought of Lisa made him hard. So that was that. So because Grayson even asked her, he's like, you know, well, how was it with Mark? Like, was he rough with you? Because he's trying to understand more so, like, okay, is this guy really abusive? And so Isabelle was like, I mean, he was rough, but I like it that way. It wasn't anything I couldn't handle. If I couldn't handle it, I'd stop it. And she's like, but I get the feeling Lisa, she's not as strong. And so they had their little discussion. So then on the way home,